Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Olivia rocked her 1.5-year-old daughter Anna in her arms. She wrapped the little girl in a blanket, pressing the sleepy, warm child to herself. Despite all the hardships that fell on a still young woman, Olivia realized the value of such moments. The room was dark and quiet, soft voices of older children coming from the living room. They knew they mustn't be loud. Mom needed to quickly put Annie to bed because she had to leave urgently. The eldest daughter, 5-year-old Victoria, even offered her help. "Mom, I can rock Annie. Don't worry, go." Olivia smiled at the girl, stroking her blonde hair. Victoria had become too mature for her age lately, understanding much, trying to help with whatever she could, and her younger brother, the close-in-age Sylvester, was no different. Only 4 years old, but he reasoned like an adult man. Victoria, at least, was a giggler, but Sylvester, always with a stern look, brows forever furrowed, all seriousness. He was a helper too, collecting toys after the little ones, washing dishes. They were good kids, the older ones. Still so young, but already a support for their mother. It will only get easier. The youngest of the older ones' son Pancho. He looked like a blonde angel, big blue eyes, a light cap of curly hair, chubby lips. Strangers were charmed by him, but looks can be deceiving. Pancho was the noisiest and most mischievous of Olivia's children, a real little hurricane. His sweet antics and spontaneity made Olivia smile. She loved each of her children, ready to give her life for any of them. Anna finally fell asleep. Olivia gently laid her in the crib. The little one slept here, in the bedroom, with her. Annie still occupied the baby crib, while Pancho had a fold-out chair Olivia bought cheaply. Victoria and Sylvester slept together on a sofa, wide and long, in the living room. Olivia jokingly called this sleeping place a football field. Of course, she wished her children had their own room filled with toys and bookshelves, each sleeping in their own bed with bright cartoon-printed bed linens. Olivia saw such in stores, looked, dreamed, imagined which set she would buy for whom. But the woman couldn't afford such luxury. She single-handedly pulled 4 children, the eldest of whom had just turned 5. There was no help for the young woman, neither adult relatives nor a husband. Alone in the whole wide world. No, not alone, of course. She had Victoria, Sylvester, Pancho, and Anna. A whole team. They are little now, but children grow up fast, mature. Soon her daughters and sons will stand on their own feet, though, for that, Olivia herself needs to make an effort. And she tried, applied for all possible allowances for the children. It turned out to be mere pennies, but still better than nothing. Olivia made sure their home was always clean, somehow managed to cook tasty and healthy food from a modest set of products, and she spent a lot of time with the children, reading books, singing songs, telling some life stories. Already teaching the older ones to read and write. The children grasped everything quickly, delighting their mother immensely. The intelligence and eagerness for knowledge of Victoria and Sylvester gave Olivia hope that her children's lives would turn out much more successful than her own. The woman was ready to do much for that. The little ones did not attend kindergarten. Firstly, they lived in a small, dilapidated house on the outskirts of the city. It was quite a distance to the nearest children's facility. If in summer it was still possible to dedicate about an hour to the road warm, scenic landscapes along the way, then in winter and during autumn bad weather, it was frightening to even think of dragging small children on foot such a distance. The bus, as an option, was also ruled out, morning crowds, expensive tickets, and the bus stop itself was far away, still needed to get there somehow. Besides, kindergarten meant additional expenses, fees for child care, constant collections for repairs, performances, gifts, and Olivia had money only for food and utilities. Sometimes she managed to save something, but sooner or later one of the children inevitably fell ill, and Olivia took all the savings to the pharmacy. She didn't want to skimp on the health of her most precious people. Olivia tried to work. She had a decent qualification, a chef confectioner. The woman got the profession while being in the orphanage, but she couldn't afford to be away from home all day. After all, Pancho and Anna were still very young, and Victoria and Silvestra only 5 and 4 years old. No, she couldn't leave such little ones alone all day. Who knows what might happen? There were enough instructive stories around. Just recently, a house on their street caught fire due to a short circuit, and there were small children inside. Fortunately, the children were saved, but it could have ended much more sadly. The children panicked, seeing the fire, hid under the bed instead of running outside. Scary. No, Olivia couldn't leave for so long while her children were still so young. Time flies quickly. Soon they will grow up. Olivia will have more opportunities, but for now she needed to protect her kids, like the apple of her eye. Olivia adjusted the blanket on sleeping Anna and glanced at the wall clock. Almost 2, she had to hurry. The supermarket, located about 15 minutes walk from their home, had already displayed expired products. It was a good way to save money. Olivia bought meat products, whose expiration date was nearing, at a bargain price. It was still very good quality meat. Olivia would never give spoiled meat to her children. Expiration dates are often a formality. Olivia realized this long ago. In the matter of saving, she had to become a real professional. The meat at low prices was quickly taken. Olivia wasn't the only smart one, so she needed to hurry before the display with promotional items was empty. The woman purposely put Anna to sleep at the right time. The older ones, they could sit alone at home for half an hour, but the younger daughter, if she woke up, could get capricious, throw a tantrum. Not always Victoria and Silvestra could calm her down. They were still young themselves, so Olivia had a routine, putting her daughter to bed for a nap at 2 o'clock, quickly getting dressed, and running to the supermarket. Today the woman was a bit late, which made her nervous. But now she carefully closed the bedroom door, hugged the older ones, asked them not to be noisy. Although it was unnecessary, her sons and daughter understood everything perfectly. She threw on an old down jacket, wrapped a wide, long scarf. It was frosty outside today. Even school classes were canceled. Going to the distant supermarket in such weather was quite an ordeal, but there was no choice. Soup had to be made, potatoes stewed. She couldn't leave the little ones hungry. The snow crunched under the soles of Olivia's old, patched-up boots. It's embarrassing to say, but she found them near a garbage bin. People sometimes leave old, but still serviceable things next to the bins. That's how Olivia got these boots, as her previous ones had completely fallen apart, so she had no choice. Olivia was even glad that she noticed this pair in time, washed them, cleaned them, had them repaired, and now wears them. Olivia dreamed that one day she would definitely have a good job. Her sons and daughters wouldn't stay little forever, and she could buy new, beautiful things for herself and her children. She just had to wait until the little ones grew up a bit more. Olivia wanted to work, very much so. She was never lazy, it's just that right now, she couldn't leave her small children alone. She just couldn't. The poverty in which Olivia had to exist with 4 children was oppressive. She was ashamed of the old, drafty house with yellowing wallpaper and the clothes, mostly hand-me-downs from neighboring kids, and the need to economize on food. But she saw no way out of this difficult situation, not yet. Yet, Olivia was happy. Even now, rushing in the frost for expired goods, she felt joy in her heart, because at home, in the heated rooms, her children waited for her, so dear, sweet, loving, and loved. Olivia had never had relatives. She always felt alone in this frightening and vast world. Of course, like everyone, she had biological parents. Someone had brought her into this world. Olivia even remembered some moments from early childhood, though these images were as if covered in a murky haze. Little Olivia enters the kitchen and sees people, lots of people. They are talking, laughing, a strong smell of cigarette smoke hangs in the air, glasses clink, and alcohol flows like a river. Olivia approaches one of the women. It's her mother, with rough hands, yellow dirty nails, and a face. The face is veiled, only thin, tousled hair is visible. Olivia asks her for something and receives a sharp slap. Her cheek instantly burns, Tears spring from her eyes. Someone among the guests laughs hoarsely in approval. Someone seems to pat the girl on the head and stuffs a candy in her small hand, wrapped in a soiled wrapper. Olivia pounces on the treat, forgetting everything. She is very hungry. The next scene is a dark room, an unfamiliar and very scary man yelling at Olivia. He is angry, his murky eyes flashing with rage. Olivia is scared. She is so little, but already understands perfectly well he can do whatever he wants with her. He is dangerous. Her mother is asleep right there on the floor, loudly snoring, no help to be expected from her. Then the man takes a belt and unbearable pain pierces her body. Olivia was removed from her heavily drinking mother at the age of 3.5. The child grew up in unbearable conditions. The girl starved, was cold, and was mistreated by both her mother and her numerous guests. For what? Well, the child was in their way, asked for food, cried, bothered them with various requests and questions. And once, Olivia stole a piece of smoked fish from the table. She was very hungry. For this, the girl was beaten with a belt by that man. Olivia remembered this incident to this day, although many years had passed. Even her mother for the first time in her life had to take her daughter to the hospital. This gave Olivia reason to believe that she was not entirely indifferent to her mother. After all, the mother was frightened for her life, took the child to the hospital. "Ha," snorted the nanny, after listening to the conclusion of the orphanage girl, dreamed up, "Huh? It wasn't you she needed, but the allowance she got for you. You think what your mom lived on and never worried. Drink away the child support while you walked around hungry. Remember, such people love no one but themselves. They're complete egoists. And your mom dragged you to the hospital to not lose a source of income. If she hadn't completely lost her mind to drinking by then, she would have realized what it would lead to. But she didn't, luckily for you, or you might have died right there on the floor." Seeing the emaciated, beaten child, the doctors, of course, sounded the alarm, called the police, child services. And the little girl, naturally, was taken from her negligent mother, who was, accordingly, stripped of parental rights. That's how Olivia ended up in the orphanage. She liked it there, in the orphanage, warm, quiet, cozy, most importantly well-fed. Initially, Olivia couldn't eat enough, even ate bread from the dining hall under her pillow. She got scolded by the nannies for this, but after what the girl endured at home, it was nothing. Olivia grew up as a quiet, calm child. She always obeyed the nannies, teachers, and educators, didn't participate in conflicts or brawls, didn't create extra problems, so the adults liked her and even set her as an example for other children. Not all the children liked this. Olivia was teased, bullied, not included in common games. It was assumed by default that she tattled on others to the educators, though the girl never did such a thing in her life, but explaining anything to these children was just impossible. Olivia saw that many children had relatives visit them, some had grandmothers come with treats, some had mothers. But Olivia, she was completely alone, no one ever came for her. It was scary. Olivia grew up and realized that she was alone in this huge world, would have to fight life alone, no one would help, support, or advise, had to rely only on herself. How is it possible to live alone, unwanted, unloved by anyone? Olivia still had hope that her mother would come to her senses. It happens sometimes. A person suddenly realizes they've lived wrongly, decides to start everything from scratch. Olivia would have forgiven her mother everything, her indifference in early childhood, the unpunished cruelty of her friends, the hunger, the parties, the antics of her guests, even that man. But, as it turned out later, her mother was no longer on earth, poisoned by tainted liquor soon after her daughter was taken to the orphanage. The girl was told about this when she was about 12 years old. And Olivia didn't really know her mother, didn't remember her voice or even her face, and never saw anything good from her biological parent, but still her heart painfully clenched, tears burst from her eyes. "What are you crying for?" The educator, who accidentally revealed the terrible truth to the girl, was surprised. This woman, as it turned out later, was completely convinced that Olivia had long known everything. Why cry over such a mom? You never saw anything good from her, a lost cause, all of them end like this. It's good they took you to the orphanage in time. But Olivia kept crying uncontrollably, her thin shoulders trembling, her head spinning. The educator awkwardly hugged her charge. The woman's face showed she desperately regretted her excessive talkativeness. Now, stop crying. I thought you knew everything. Don't cry, she's not worth your tears. Olivia continued to weep. She didn't know how to explain to the educator what was going on in her soul. After all, she had dreamed of meeting her mother for all these years, almost certain that her mother regretted her past life and was trying to make amends. She imagined how one day her mother would return to the orphanage and take her, Olivia, with her. It was pleasant to think that there was a blood relative in the world, though fallen, but loving. But now, it turns out, all these years, Olivia's hopes and dreams were in vain. She had no one, utterly alone in a vast, hostile world. How frightening! How painful! Probably, this feeling of loneliness and coldness made Olivia dream of a large family. She always knew she would have many children and a good, kind husband, of course, a non-drinker, for sure the opposite would never be in their family. They would build a large house, furnish it with new furniture, hang beautiful curtains, and choose paintings for the walls. They would have many children and love each of them very much, and their family would always be warm, and cozy. These dreams cheered her up, gave her strength, filled Olivia with energy. She smiled when she pictured the idyllic scenes from her future life before going to sleep. The girl knew it would be so. Time flew quickly. Olivia was now an adult, a graduate of the orphanage. As an orphan, she was given a tiny old house on the outskirts of the city. It needed repairs, investments, but Olivia was happy even with that. Her own home. Now she wouldn't have to share a bedroom with a dozen not-so-friendly roommates. What happiness! As a ward of the orphanage, Olivia had managed to study in college as a chef confectioner. It was a good profession, quite in demand in their city. The young woman quickly found a job, became an assistant cook in a cafe. They paid well. Olivia's salary, as a beginner, was not very large, but it was enough for living. Besides, there was a free lunch at work. Olivia considered herself a real lucky woman. She liked her new life, no strict educators, no cruel children. Now she could only interact with those she liked. For the first time in her life, Olivia had real friends, the waitress girls from the cafe. They talked a lot, laughed, shopped together, and even went to clubs. Olivia had never imagined how great it was to have friends. She never had close relationships with anyone in the orphanage. Little by little, with her salary, Olivia did some superficial repairs in the house. Of course, it was far from ideal. To fully fix up the place required a lot of money, but still, the rooms became cleaner, neater, brighter. Olivia rejoiced. She was taking small steps toward her dream. She already had a beautiful, cozy house, and soon she would definitely meet a good man, and they would finally have children. Then Olivia would never be lonely again. Indeed, Olivia did meet someone. Max worked as a loader with a dispatcher. Together they distributed meat to catering points. He was a not-so-tall guy with lively eyes and a charming smile, swarthy, with black hair, slightly resembling a gypsy. Lively, dark brown eyes framed by thick eyelashes, black eyebrows spreading out, a real handsome man. Even the waitress girls, who all dreamed of wealthy fiancés, couldn't help but look at Max. Initially, he was friendly to everyone, joking and smiling with them. But then he suddenly started paying special attention to Olivia, which was unexpected and, of course, very pleasant for her. One day, the usually cheerful and smiling Max approached Olivia in a completely different manner. Serious, timid, and stuttering, he asked her to the movies. Surprised, she almost dropped the tray of frozen fish. Of course, she agreed. They started dating. Max turned out to be simple and pleasant in communication. He won Olivia over by caring for her, asking if she was hungry, draping his jacket over her shoulders so she wouldn't freeze, and inquiring about her day. Olivia had never felt so needed and loved before. She completely trusted Max and melted into him. Max also had a tough fate. He grew up in a family, not in an orphanage, but Max's mother lived in the village. Besides the eldest son, she had 7 more children, each slightly younger than the last. The woman's husband died right after the birth of the youngest daughter, so the single mother struggled to pull through with the whole brood. Naturally, it was hard. As Max grew a bit older, he started helping his mother on the farm. He cleaned manure, spread hay with a pitchfork, and cleaned the cow sheds with his mom. Naturally, there was no time left for studies, so Max barely finished school. College was out of the question, and he was also unfit for the army due to flat feet. This didn't hinder his life, but it made him ineligible for service. Another path was closed for Max. With nothing left to do, the young lad, almost a child, went to the city to earn a living. It turned out that for a hardworking and handy young man, there was plenty of work in the city. True, the pay for unskilled labor was meager, but Max still earned significantly more than in the village. He hustled, working like a squirrel in a wheel, at a sawmill, at a car wash, clearing snow from roads in winter, guarding stalls, and even doing part-time delivery for restaurant food. He lived in a hostel. He couldn't afford decent rented accommodation. He was still living in a hostel when he met Olivia. Listening to her beloved stories about the horrors of such accommodations, Olivia felt lucky the state had provided her with an entire house, albeit small and old, but hers, without cockroaches or rats, without neighbors to fear. Olivia felt sorry for the kind guy who economized on himself just to send some money to his mother. It was hard for her to raise so many children alone. The eldest son was taking care of the family. This certainly commanded respect. Soon, Olivia herself suggested Max move in with her. Why delay? They were happy together, and Max was tired of living in hostels, like a rolling stone. Max gladly agreed, and they started living as one happy, harmonious family. Max worked a lot. His job was irregular. Sometimes he could stay at home for 2 to 3 days, but then he would be gone for several days. He brought home little money, less than Olivia, but she never thought to reproach him for it. Olivia was happy that she was no longer alone, that there was someone who cared for her, loved and valued her. Max was always interested in hearing about Olivia's day. He supported her in everything, always took her side. It was nice to feel the presence of a loved one by her side. Also, Max, like no one else, knew how to make Olivia laugh. He was a sociable person with many friends and acquaintances. Everywhere he went with Olivia, he would meet someone he knew. Some of them Olivia didn't like by their appearance. It was clear they were the partying type. From her childhood experiences, she could spot such people from a mile away. But she didn't share these concerns with Max, fearing to destroy the fragile warmth that was developing between them. Then a miracle happened. Olivia suddenly realized she was pregnant. They hadn't planned on children yet, had talked about it, but decided not to rush. More precisely, Max decided. He said that they first needed to be financially stable, not wanting his children to grow up in poverty like he did. Olivia agreed with these sensible arguments, although she really dreamed of becoming a mother soon. She thought they would surely manage with a child together, but if Max thought otherwise, so be it. And then this unexpected pregnancy happened. Olivia quietly rejoiced at this unforeseen happiness, already imagining herself with a stroller, walking through the park. She was sure Max would share her feelings. They always understood each other. But when the guy heard the news, he scratched his head puzzled and frowned. There wasn't even a hint of joy on his face. Wow, oh, and how untimely, Max finally said. So, what? Do you want to keep it? Olivia's eyes flared up. For the first time in her life she was angry at Max. How dare he ask such questions? It seemed the guy understood everything from her face. All right, he hugged Olivia by the shoulders. This gesture always had a calming effect on her. We'll figure something out. Olivia sighed with relief. Now everything was going just as she had once imagined. For the next few months, Olivia lived in anticipation of a logical step from Max, a marriage proposal. After all, she was carrying his child, their firstborn, so it was time to legalize their relationship. The baby needed a father and a mother. But Max was in no hurry to take Olivia to the registry office. Then she decided to have a serious conversation herself, though it was unpleasant for her. She had hoped for a romantic proposal, but now she had to nudge Max into marriage. Wedding? What are you talking about? Max was surprised. I thought you understood everything yourself. What? Olivia became wary. Well, what? If we formalize our relationship, it means you won't be a single mother. Otherwise, if you give birth on your own, the benefits will be bigger. In our situation, we can't afford to miss out on state aid. We need to squeeze out everything we can. Olivia thought it over and decided Max was right. He was indeed more practical and thoughtful in such matters. What difference did it make if they had a marriage stamp in their passports? The important thing was that they were together, and the baby would grow up with a mom and dad. Besides, the benefits would indeed help, especially since Olivia wouldn't be able to work for some time, and Max was earning just pennies. On time, little Victoria was born. Olivia looked into her daughter's face and couldn't believe this was her child, her own, long-awaited, and so loved. She could spend hours admiring her little girl, charmed by everything about her, how she yawned, cooed, and played with her tiny fingers on rattles. Watching her daughter, Olivia realized her own mother had indeed been a monster. How could she have treated her own child that way? Children are such happiness. They are fragile, priceless, trusting, completely dependent on close adults. One must have a heart of stone to mistreat their own daughters and sons. Max, who had raised his younger brothers and sisters, handled the child confidently and skillfully. He taught inexperienced Olivia a lot, who at first was even afraid to touch the infant. But Olivia didn't notice any special love or attachment to the baby from Max. On the contrary, the infant seemed to even irritate him. He now tried not to be home more than necessary, quickly leaving for odd jobs or to see friends. This was strange and hurtful. They also argued a lot about raising Victoria. Olivia loved to rock her daughter in her arms, talked a lot to her. Max, however, claimed this would spoil the child, and he even prevented Olivia from approaching the crib when Victoria cried. She'll cry it out and settle down, he stopped Olivia, or she'll get used to crying for attention. It'll be hard later on. Olivia restrained herself around Max. But when he was not home, and no one disturbed them, she never put her beloved baby down, constantly cuddled her, cooed sweetly to her girl, feeling infinitely happy. Victoria was not even a year old when Olivia realized she was pregnant again. The news shocked her more than the first pregnancy announcement. She knew children required maximum attention from parents, and diapers and formula were quite expensive. And Max turned out not to be as caring and loving a father as Olivia had hoped. Still, once the initial shock passed, she felt incredibly happy. Victoria was growing up, becoming more independent, and here was another little one on the way. Olivia still remembered the wonder of holding an infant that smelled so sweetly of milk. This time, Max even rejoiced at the news. Great. There will be more benefits, we really need them. Olivia was, of course, hurt that her beloved was only thinking about money at such a magical moment. She was entirely focused on the new child, boy or girl, who the child would resemble, how Victoria would react to a new brother or sister. Olivia had a preterm delivery with Sylvestra. No wonder, during the last months, she had to carry Victoria a lot, who couldn't walk properly yet. Max was always absent. He excused himself with extra jobs and gigs. Maybe that was true, but increasingly he came home drunk, and Olivia saw none of his money. She tried to talk to her husband. His fondness for drinking scared her. But he just shrugged it off. Sylvestra was born a little premature, underweight, and needed to be nurtured in an incubator. Olivia was so scared for her baby. She went to the hospital every day and sat for a long time by the incubator, urging her son to grow and fight. Sylvestre tried hard. He became stronger and stronger right before her eyes and one by one refuted all the doctor's gloomy forecasts, to the surprise and joy of the doctors. After a month, Sylvestre was discharged fully healthy. Olivia's happiness knew no bounds. The danger had passed. Now everything would be all right. Sylvestre looked very much like his father, just as swarthy, black-eyed, the complete opposite of the light, blue-eyed Toya. At first, Max showed more interest in his son than in his daughter. Olivia was glad, but Max's paternal feelings quickly faded. Now he brought no money home. On the contrary, he even took the benefits, constantly roamed around, sometimes literally crawled home, unable to even walk properly. Max got into drinking, which scared Olivia a lot. She feared their family would turn into something similar to what she observed in early childhood. At least Max didn't bring his friends home. He drank elsewhere. Olivia, of course, tried to reason with her husband, but he wouldn't listen. He was rude to her, blamed Olivia for what was happening. The children openly irritated him. His wife, or rather his cohabitant, he now held in no regard. Olivia, absorbed in caring for the children, didn't immediately understand what was happening. And when she did realize it, she somehow decided she could fix everything, convey family values to Max, regain his love and favor. After all, there had been a time when it was like that, so there was a chance that peace and harmony would return to their family. Olivia noticed her next pregnancy, the third, when the baby had already started to move. In the worries about the two little ones and concerns about her husband, the woman missed the first signs. Thus, the blonde angel Pancho was born. The midwives and nurses in the maternity hospital gasped, looking at the baby, and unanimously predicted a modeling career for him. Pancho took the very best from both parents. Olivia was happy, of course, looking at her son. She immediately loved him, just like her two older children, but Olivia was already very worried about her future and the future of these little ones. Max, he was behaving worse and worse. Max drank, rapidly degrading and losing his human appearance. He hardly earned anything, lived on the benefits the state paid for the children, told Olivia terrible and unfair words, called her names, sometimes even slapped the children, who interfered with his rest. And still, Olivia hoped. She remembered the old Max, loving, caring, good, and tried to talk to him about how he used to be whenever she could. One day Max couldn't take it anymore and shouted a terrible truth in Olivia's face. "I was just pretending. Do you understand or not? I never liked you. Ugly, quiet mouse. I had nowhere to live. If you had spent even one night in that stinky hostel with rats, snoring men, and cockroaches, you would understand me. The state handed you a house on a silver platter. You don't know such things." Tears sprang from Olivia's eyes, darkness swirled in her vision, and she almost lost consciousness, barely holding on. After all, little Pancho was in her arms, he could not be dropped, and in her womb lived Annie, only Olivia didn't know it yet. Olivia's fourth pregnancy became known only after Max had permanently disappeared from the life of his large family. It happened suddenly. Max's weekly absences no longer worried Olivia, they had become routine. But when he didn't show up after being away for 2 weeks, the mother of many children burst into tears. Despite everything, she still loved him and worried about him. Olivia's search began at the sawmill where her husband often moonlighted. Max was well known there. However, it turned out he hadn't been seen at the sawmill for a long time, though he had been called and offered work. Worried, Olivia then went to the meat processing plant where the father of her children worked as a loader. No one knew anything about Max's fate. Olivia was about to leave, disheartened, but near the gates, a girl in a white coat, resembling medical uniform, caught up with her. She was a local lab assistant. "Are you looking for Max?" she asked, catching her breath. Olivia nodded briefly. "Well, I heard from ours that his wife came here looking for Max, so I ran after you immediately." "So you know something?" The girl sighed deeply and nodded. "Max, he was good friends with my guy, Sergio. He often stayed over at our place. At first, I thought Max was a free man. I was surprised to learn he had 3 children. By the way, my name is Lucilla. Olivia introduced herself too. So here's the thing, Lucilla continued sympathetically, Max. I know it's unpleasant for you to hear this now, but he behaved like a completely free man, you know, flirting with girls and all that. Olivia felt her heart squeeze with pain and offense. She was flushed with heat, and her temples throbbed. So, while she was struggling alone with 3 little ones, not getting enough sleep, and barely managing to eat properly, Max was leisurely having fun with friends and even flirting with someone. Olivia suspected that her beloved was not disappearing for work for days on end, but still hoped his frequent drinking was just a way to relieve stress and relax after workdays. Somehow, she never thought that Max would have other women. All right, I'll be as frank as possible with you, Lucilla finally decided. Basically, Max hooked up with Sabina, a friend of one of Sergio's friends. She's quite a character. A seasoned lady. Roaming all over the country, sometimes settling down for work here and there, like a rolling stone, with no place or home of her own, living mainly off men. Apparently, Max really liked her free lifestyle. His eyes lit up when Sabina talked about herself. And he really liked Sabina herself. Lucilla hesitated, not knowing how to continue the story. She seemed to struggle to find the right words, apparently not wanting to shock Olivia. So, in short, Max left with Sabina probably about 5 days ago. Where to, I have no idea, honestly. Anything can be expected from Sabina. I barely know her at all, but I've come to understand what kind of person she is. And Max. He just followed her like a calf. Sergio later told me that Max has 3 children. I almost fell off my chair. I would have never thought that. Max never mentioned his offspring once. And normal family men don't behave like that. So he wasn't a normal family man after all. Olivia shook her head. She had gotten over the initial shock. Max's betrayal still needed to be rethought, and she had to figure out how to move on, how to raise the kids alone. You should file a report with the police that a person is missing. They should find him, let him at least pay alimony, Lucilla advised. No joke, he fathered 3 kids and ran off to a free life. Olivia nodded. At that moment, she had no intention of going to the authorities. She was deeply hurt by Max, and besides, she lacked the energy and time for all this hassle. But later, she did go to the station, not for herself, but for her little ones. She learned about her 4th pregnancy and realized she was unlikely to cope alone. She needed help, even if just minimal, financial support. But the policeman stunned her. Legally, she and Max were complete strangers, and the man had no relation to the children. They didn't even accept her statement, so Olivia left with nothing. She didn't consider getting rid of the child, although the term still allowed it, but she couldn't bring herself to take such a step, deciding, let what happens, happen. Annie was born. While Olivia was in the maternity hospital, her older kids were taken in by friends, 1 each, as no one could handle all 3 at once. Olivia was very grateful to them, as otherwise, she would have had to put the kids in a shelter temporarily, which would automatically attract the attention of child services. Life was hard for Olivia, alone with 4 little ones, and money was tight. But over time, she adapted, learned to manage everything, to save money, and her older kids grew up and began to provide tangible support. Even their attempts to help gave her strength and energy, pushing her to move forward. So, Olivia didn't complain about life and never regretted any of her children, no matter how tough it was. On the contrary, the thought of any of them not existing scared her. Max never showed up again. Initially, Olivia waited for him, hoping he would come to his senses. It seemed she still loved the father of her children, or at least the image she had painted in her head, and was even ready to forgive him. But, of course, Max never returned. Maybe he started a new life somewhere far away with his Sabina, or maybe he went on a solo journey. Over time, Olivia realized that neither she nor the children were needed by Max. Without them, life was easier, more comfortable, and more pleasant for him. The man looked at the little ones with irritation. They evoked no feelings in him. So why rush back to them? On the contrary, he probably was glad to be rid of family shackles. Olivia hid her face in the white scarf wrapped around her puffer jacket, her nose completely frozen. Yes, it was cold today. Thankfully, the supermarket was close. She quickened her pace and slipped into the saving warmth of the store. Here, as usual, it smelled of fresh bakery, fruits. At the entrance stood the familiar elderly security guard. He always asked Olivia about her little ones. The man himself was a grandfather, with grandchildren the same age as Olivia's kids. And now the guard smiled, greeted her, and handed her a handful of candies for the children. Hurry to the meat section, there's already a crowd there, they'll take everything soon, the man advised. Olivia nodded and hurried towards the end of the shopping hall, to the refrigerated displays. The security guard was right, there indeed was a crowd gathered there. Olivia moved closer to the display and began loading her cart with products. She had an eye for the freshest and best cuts. Finally, Olivia headed to the checkout with her haul. Along the way, she mentally planned what dishes she could prepare from it. They were all budget-friendly options. The meat had to last a long time, at least until the next social assistance payment. After paying, Olivia slowly left the shopping hall. She didn't want to go back out into the cold, but what choice did she have? Besides, she needed to hurry back as the kids were alone at home. Annie would sleep for a while longer, but Pancho might get up to mischief. His angelic patience only lasted for short periods. The space between the entrance doors and the shopping hall doors was quite large, with carts and baskets for customers and vending machines for coffee and toys. On a cold ledge along the wall sat an old lady. Olivia couldn't remember if the elderly woman was there when she had entered the store. She might have been, but Olivia was in such a hurry she noticed nothing around her. The old lady looked lost and frightened. She glanced around, shivering slightly, not from the cold, it was warm inside, but probably from fear. She was dressed in a good coat and a beautiful downy shawl, with leather gloves trimmed with fur on her hands, probably quite expensive. She didn't look like a beggar or homeless, but that scared look. The person obviously needed help. Olivia realized she couldn't just leave, sighed, and approached the old lady. "Hello, do you need help?" "What?" The elderly woman raised her eyes to Olivia. They were light blue, almost faded in color. "You're sitting here alone. Are you feeling unwell?" "I guess not. Nothing hurts, as if." "That's good," Olivia smiled, "but you look scared." "Something happened?" "I think I'm lost," the old lady finally admitted. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she forced them back by sheer willpower. The old woman was trying to stay composed. "How so?" Olivia was surprised. "And how did you end up here? Where did you come from?" "I don't remember," the old lady shook her head. "I don't remember anything at all. I only know that my name is Sonora Nunez. I grew up in an orphanage. It was tough. I think I worked as a teacher, but it's all like a fog, and I don't remember anything about my life after childhood. Just some episodes in my memory, that's all. And I don't understand how I ended up here. I remember wandering around the railway station square, lots of people around. I warmed up in the station building, then just walked wherever my eyes led me. I got cold, hid here. Where to go? What to do? I have no idea. Please help me." Olivia looked at her interlocutor wide-eyed. Such a story. Elderly people often have memory problems, but this was something incredible. However, Olivia knew what to do. "Now, let's go to the police," she said gently. "We'll tell them your story, they'll figure it out. Maybe your relatives are already looking for you, worried." "Maybe," the old lady agreed. Her face was intelligent, cultured, and here's such a misfortune, no memory at all. Indeed, old age is no joy, as people say. "Let's go." Olivia extended her hand to the old lady. "The police station is right nearby." The police officer on duty at the entrance listened to their story, made a call on the internal phone, and then escorted both ladies to an office on the second floor. Olivia told the uniformed man everything she knew about the old lady. He listened half-heartedly, constantly distracted by his phone. It was obvious that he found the case uninteresting. So, the man said when Olivia finished, "We'll send the grandma to a shelter for the time being. I'll issue a notice about her, start looking for relatives." To a shelter? The old lady, silent until then, suddenly trembled like a leaf. Why to a shelter? Why? Why? The police officer was surprised. "Well, while we are looking for your relatives, where do you plan to live? Not on the streets in this freezing cold, right? We have good social shelters. There live the elderly and—" "No, I won't go to a shelter," the old lady said firmly. "Why?" Both the police officer and Olivia exclaimed in unison. "I grew up in an orphanage, it was hard. I remember everything that happened there clearly, but then there's just emptiness. But my childhood years. I definitely won't go back to a shelter." The police officer shrugged. "Well, I can't force you to go there, and I won't persuade you. I have enough work as it is." "Give us a few minutes," Olivia asked him. He nodded graciously. For the next quarter of an hour, Olivia unsuccessfully tried to persuade the old lady, but she firmly stood her ground. She was ready to freeze on the street rather than go to the shelter. Something had happened to her many years ago in the orphanage, something very scary. Even the mere word shelter triggered a panic attack in the elderly woman. And Olivia saw that she wasn't being capricious or exaggerating, she was genuinely terrified of the shelter. "All right. And where do you plan to wait while they search for your relatives?" Olivia finally conceded. "Well, I can sleep at the station, hide in stores during the day from the frost. Anything is better than going back to that hell." "No way," Olivia declared resolutely. What do you say? What do you say about staying with me?" Olivia didn't ponder over this decision, it spontaneously matured. And what other choice did they have? The old lady immediately nodded. "Thank you, girl. You're kind, compassionate, you don't often see that nowadays. So many people passed by me in the store, and only you stopped, approached, and wanted to help." Olivia gave the police officer her address in case the old lady's relatives were found, and together with her guest, she headed home. Olivia was anxious, they had lost a lot of time at the station, who knows what was happening at home. But everything at home was fine. Sylvestra and Victoria were playing with Pancho with blocks. Annie was still asleep. Seeing their mother, the older trio rushed to embrace their long-awaited parent. "Why were you gone so long?" Victoria asked. "And who is this?" Curious Pancho inquired, pointing a tiny finger at the old lady. Sonora Nunez, upon seeing the little ones, broke into a smile, and a pleasant warmth appeared in her eyes. The fears of the old woman seemed to instantly melt away and recede. "Meet the kids. This is Sonora Nunez, she will be staying with us for a while." "Are you our grandma?" asked Sylvestra, who had been quiet until now. "If you want, you can call me that," Sonora Nunez nodded, gently ruffling the boy's hair. "Can I too?" asked Victoria. "Well, of course." Olivia smiled. Her children didn't have a grandmother or grandfather, just her, their mother. They probably missed the warmth of other adults, which is why they accepted Sonora Nunez so joyfully. She, too, seemed to melt from interacting with the little ones. It was pleasant to watch. Sonora Nunez stayed to play with the kids, and everyone enjoyed the activity. Olivia went to the kitchen to prepare lunch. While cutting vegetables for the soup, she thought about where to accommodate the guest. She decided to set her up right there in the kitchen. She could borrow a folding bed from the neighbors, and Sonora Nunez would probably find it comfortable and warm near the window. In the evening, when the children were asleep, Sonora Nunez and Olivia sat at the table for a long time, talking. Olivia told the elderly guest about her life, how she also lived in an orphanage, dreamed of a big, strong family, met Max, and his betrayal. Sonora Nunez listened silently, shaking her head in dismay and clicking her tongue from time to time. Occasionally, she gently patted Olivia on the shoulder with her warm, dry hand. Olivia immediately felt calmer and lighter in spirit. Sonora Nunez remembered little about herself. "I remember my childhood in the orphanage well, but then it's all a blur, just bits and pieces. I remember working in a school, teaching English, but nothing about my family. Did I even have one? Maybe I was a loner? But where did I live? How did I end up here? It's all so strange, like a fog." Olivia couldn't imagine what it must be like to remember nothing about oneself. It must be terrifying. But Sonora Nunez was brave. And she was very grateful to Olivia for taking her in. Days passed. Olivia and Sonora Nunez became close friends, living in harmony. With the arrival of the guest, Olivia felt relieved. Sonora Nunez happily took care of the kids, played with them, fed them, and even started teaching them English, including little Pancho. To Olivia's surprise, her children picked up everything quickly. It was clear that Sonora Nunez had been a very good teacher once and loved her subject. There was no information about her. Apparently, no one was looking for her. Sonora Nunez underwent medical examinations. It turned out that she had recently had a stroke, which could explain the memory loss. They tried to find information about her in hospitals. A stroke is serious, so she must have been hospitalized for some time. There should have been records. But after a few weeks, it became clear that if Sonora Nunez was treated anywhere, it certainly wasn't in clinics in this city. Everything pointed to her being from somewhere else. "Maybe I'm not from here," Sonora Nunez agreed. "I came to my senses at the railway station square, as if I had been asleep before. It's strange, like I was turned on at the station." The investigator warned that if Sonora Nunez was from out of town, it would be very difficult to find out who she was. Unless someone starts looking for her specifically, considering how many people go missing across the country. Many of them are never found. There are plenty of such cases. Sonora Nunez was given temporary documents by the police and even managed to secure a social pension for her, as she needed something to live on. The money was modest, but it was better than nothing. Sonora Nunez tried to give her entire pension to Olivia, who refused to accept it. Then the old lady found another solution. She took over the expenses for stocking the refrigerator. Sonora Nunez often bought sweets for the children, chocolate bars, pastries. The children's eyes shone with joy every time she gave them a treat. It was not so much the sweets, but the attention and love of the guest that made the children happy. Toya, Silvestra, and Pancho called Sonora Nunez grandmother, and she called them her grandchildren. It was a very friendly and cheerful company. Olivia often rejoiced that she had been in the supermarket on that frosty day and did not pass by the lonely old lady. Now she had a close and dear adult who cared whether Olivia was tired or not, who genuinely loved her children. Finally, there was someone who adored the kids just as much as Olivia herself. An indescribable feeling. At first, Olivia was afraid that Sonora Nunez's memory might suddenly return, and the guest would disappear from their lives. These were very selfish thoughts, but what could she do? Later, the woman realized that even if Sonora Nunez's relatives were found, they would not part from each other, and she felt much calmer. Now that there was another adult in the house, Olivia finally managed to get a job. She confidently left the children with the guest, knowing that she could handle them even better than Olivia herself. Sonora Nunez was only happy to help Olivia with the children. Olivia first worked as a cleaner for a few hours a day. It was hard work with low pay, and she wanted to work in her specialty. She had once been a very decent cook, but that meant a full working day. Olivia discussed this issue with Sonora Nunez. "Of course, try it, search for yourself, don't worry, I'll manage the kids. It's only a joy for me, you know. And besides, I want to be useful to you too. You've done so much for me." Olivia got a job in a cafeteria nearby, first as an assistant cook, then as a cook. She even took advanced training courses to climb the career ladder. These were completely different earnings, interesting, beloved work, decent pay, and even the opportunity to take home leftovers after shifts. Olivia, Sonora Nunez, and the children started living a completely different life. Olivia was able to send the 3 older children to kindergarten. Now she had the money to pay for the children's institution, for additional fees, and for transportation. Toya, Silvestra, and Pancho were delighted. The sociable kids were thrilled by joint games with other children, morning performances, and classes. Annie, of course, was not yet old enough for kindergarten, but Olivia knew, now even the youngest daughter would go to the children's institution when the time came. Sonora Nunez stayed home during the day, cleaning, cooking, taking care of Annie, and in the evening, if Olivia could not make it, she herself went to pick up the older ones from kindergarten. Gradually, with the help of Sonora Nunez and hired workers, Olivia renovated the house, furnished the rooms with new beautiful furniture. The children now had toys, beautiful clothes, and 2 televisions appeared in the house. A larger one hung in the living room, the other on the kitchen wall. Olivia was glad that her life had become so warm, cozy, and prosperous. Yes, they weren't living lavishly, but now they had enough for all necessities, no longer needing to scrimp and deny themselves much. But the most important thing was the warm atmosphere of love and mutual acceptance that prevailed in their small house. Olivia felt that Sonora Nunez cared about her, sincerely wished her all the best, and showed support and compassion. Probably, this is how real mothers of adult daughters behave. Olivia had never even dreamed of experiencing such happiness. After all, she had always lacked exactly this kind of support and care from an important adult in her life. This happened on the eve of the Christmas. By that time, Sonora Nunez had lived with Olivia and her children for almost a year. They were decorating a Christmas tree in the living room, a real one, smelling of resin, prickly and fluffy. It was Sonora Nunez who insisted that the tree be real. What kind of holiday is it without the scent of pine? She wondered aloud. They had to buy Christmas ornaments as Olivia's house had none. Before, they never managed to get a tree. Sonora Nunez turned the purchase of decorations into a whole event, almost a celebration. In the morning, they all went to the nearest supermarket, the very one where Olivia had once encountered a lonely, frightened old lady. They walked long among the festive displays, choosing, arguing, discussing everyone's opinion, getting into the New Year spirit. In addition to the packs of ornaments, Sonora Nunez added something else to the basket: colored paper, cardboard, glue, scissors. Then the whole family spent the entire evening making Christmas garlands, crafting tiny houses with snow-dusted roofs, cutting stars from cardboard, and covering them with foil. The living room temporarily turned into a workshop. The long table was cluttered with scraps, tinsel, and paints. Everyone participated in the preparations, even little Annie, who was only 2.5 years old. Under the careful guidance of Sonora Nunez, the little girl painted the next cardboard hut. The girl tried very hard, even breaking a little sweat. Meanwhile, Olivia was busy in the kitchen, baking a pie and cooking a chicken in the oven. The room smelled of delicious food and the Christmas tree. And although there were still a few days until the Christmas, there had never been such a festive atmosphere in this house before. And then, on that very cozy and almost magical evening, a car stopped in front of Olivia's house. She saw everything from the kitchen window. A black foreign car, obviously not cheap, parked right at their gate. Olivia was alarmed by this fact. Who could it possibly be? She wasn't expecting anyone, and she didn't know anyone with such expensive cars. Maybe it was a mistake. A man got out of the car, tall and handsome. He was wearing a leather jacket, too light for this weather. Probably, he always traveled by car, never having to freeze at bus stops or run a few hundred meters to the nearest store in the frost. He was a man from a completely different life. What did he want from them? Finally, after hesitating for a minute, he pressed the button on the bell hanging on the gate. A melodious trill immediately spread through the rooms. Who is it? Curious Peter immediately perked up. Probably the postman, Olivia shouted as she ran. She was already putting on her down jacket. Who are you? Olivia asked sternly to the man at the gate. You don't know me, the man replied. It might sound strange, but it seems that my mother is with you now. Sonora Nunez. Olivia's heart seemed to stop and plummet. Could her relatives have found her? Or maybe this man was lying. The neighbors knew that Olivia had taken in an old lady. Maybe the stranger heard their conversations and now, under this pretext, was trying to get into their house. Olivia had her children and Sonora Nunez. She couldn't afford to be careless. I can't let you in, it's already night. You're a complete stranger. The police know about Sonora Nunez. Go there, they'll call us for identification. I understand you're afraid of me. That's not surprising, but I just can't wait any longer. I've been searching for my mother for almost a year, and now, when there's a glimmer of hope, I really want to know if I'm mistaken. Olivia understood this man and even sympathized with him, but she couldn't let a stranger in with her children and Sonora Nunez. She was hesitant. Here, take a look. Suddenly, the man pulled a phone out of his jacket pocket. Come closer and take a look. Is this woman living at your house? Do you recognize her? Olivia stared intently at the screen. The man was scrolling through the photos with his index finger, and yes, it was indeed Sonora Nunez. There was no mistake. In some of the pictures, Sonora Nunez posed alone, next to a swimming pool, against a background of palms, always stylish, expensively dressed, imposing, happy. In others, there were more people with her, including this very man, now standing behind the low fence, looking hopefully at Olivia. That's her. The woman looked up at him, bewildered. That's definitely her. Please come in. My name is Victoriano. The man introduced himself in an excited voice as they walked through the crunching snow to the house. I was on a business trip abroad when my mom got lost. She had a stroke, lost her memory, and there's another very dark story. I'll tell you, of course. It was evident that Victoriano was very anxious about meeting Sonora Nunez and still feared he might be mistaken. She's in the living room, Olivia said softly, with my children. Wait, I'll take the little ones to the bedroom now, keep them busy with something. I think they're better off not being present at this meeting. I'll prepare Sonora Nunez a little, stay in the kitchen for now. When Olivia entered the room, Sonora Nunez immediately understood something was wrong. Kids, play in the bedroom for now. I have a task for you, draw what you want to receive from Santa. Today is such a magical day, all these wishes will definitely come true. The children joyfully rushed off to carry out their mother's command, while Olivia turned to Sonora Nunez, who was looking at her questioningly. Someone wants to talk to you. It's a person from your past life. Your son, as he claims. Sonora Nunez nodded briefly, not a single muscle twitched on her face, but Olivia saw the hope that lit up in the woman's eyes. Victoriano, Olivia called out. The man entered the room, looked at Sonora Nunez, flinched, and cautiously approached her. Victoriano's eyes shone with the joy of recognition. Yes, it was his mother. Sonora Nunez looked very attentively, then smiled broadly and reached out her hands to him. Vico. Mother and son embraced tightly. I recognized you, I remembered, Sonora Nunez exclaimed. Mom, forgive me, I was far away, I couldn't protect you. Olivia watched the family members who had found each other again after a year, and she felt a prickling in her nose from the tears welling up. She was happy for Sonora Nunez, but at the same time, she didn't want to part with her. What Olivia really wanted to know was how it all happened, how Sonora Nunez had disappeared. Didn't anyone look after a person who had suffered a stroke and lost her memory? When emotions settled a bit, Olivia brought everyone coffee, just as the pie in the oven was ready. The children were engrossed in drawing, and the adults had a chance to talk calmly about everything. I'm immensely grateful to you. Victoriano looked at Olivia with burning eyes. If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have become of my mom. You saved her. I wonder who saved whom. Olivia smiled. You saved me, don't argue, Sonora Nunez interrupted, a kind and compassionate young woman who was herself in a difficult situation. Do you think you were the first one to notice me? There, in the supermarket, everyone just didn't care, but you didn't just walk past. Thank you, Victoriano thanked her again. Now everything will be fine. I had almost given up hope of finding my mom. But what happened? Olivia couldn't help but ask. What occurred? How did it all happen? Yes, I'm very curious too, Sonora Nunez joined in the question. It's a long story, Victoriano sighed, and a very ugly one. Sonora Nunez raised her son alone. It was hard, but she managed, working as a teacher at a nearby gymnasium, disappearing at school for days as she took on many hours she had to feed her child. Vico grew up mainly on his own. Acquaintances urged the woman to send her son to a boarding school during the week, assuring her that it would be easier for both her and the child, but Sonora Nunez, who grew up in an orphanage herself, was adamantly against such an option. Vico had to stay with her, period. Especially since Victoriano, despite his young age, could be trusted. He'd do his homework, tidy up the rooms, and even prepare dinner for his mother. She usually returned from school late, with no time left for cooking. So they lived. Sonora Nunez was loved and respected at school. She knew how to find a way even with the laziest and least interested students. Victoriano was proud of his mom and was happy that she was so necessary, irreplaceable, intelligent, and noble. The boy breezed through difficult tasks, so when the time came, he entered Capital University's Department of Applied Informatics without tutors or connections. There he took up programming seriously. Sonora Nunez tried to send her son money, but she lived paycheck to paycheck herself, so she couldn't help much. Therefore, Victoriano started earning money in his second year, creating simple websites to order, writing applications and programs for money. By the end of university, he already had his own business, a small IT company. The company grew and developed, and soon money flowed in as the services were in high demand and well paid. Victoriano first bought an apartment for himself, then acquired housing for his mother. She moved to Capital to be closer to her son. There, she got a job in a school. An English teacher with vast experience was welcomed with open arms. Victor's business was flourishing. Soon, he became a very wealthy man, and everything in his life was good. Everything delighted Sonora Nunez, except one thing. She felt it was time for Victor to settle down, start a family, and have children. She wanted to enjoy her grandchildren, especially since Victor was a late child for Sonora Nunez, long awaited and much loved. Sonora Nunez feared she might not live to see her son's children, but as the years passed, Victor was fully immersed in his business, not even thinking about children and family. His focus was on expanding into international markets and developing new products. Constant business trips, life at work. Meanwhile, Sonora Nunez retired, having a lot of free time. She began traveling with friends and sometimes with her son. Nina didn't pressure Victor about marriage, though he knew her views. But she allowed herself to rejoice and even threw a small celebration when Victor finally proposed to his girlfriend. Theodora was beautiful, like a model, smart, and good at socializing, having finished an English school and an economic faculty, working at a partner company of Victor's firm. That's actually how she met Victor. The young couple got married, went on a honeymoon, but for some reason, they weren't in a hurry to have children. Theodora apparently wasn't ready. Of course, Sonora Nunez was a bit disappointed, but she didn't intrude into her son's family life. Then suddenly, a stroke struck like lightning from a clear sky. Sonora Nunez was admitted to the best clinic in the capital, her condition was closely monitored, and she had access to the best medications. They nearly pulled Sonora Nunez back from the brink. It was a very serious case. Victor spared neither money nor time to arrange everything in the best possible way. But there were consequences. Sonora Nunez began to rapidly lose her memory, not even recognizing her son sometimes. Sometimes she was fine, but at times she looked at Victor as a stranger, which scared him. He sent her for endless rehabilitations, even contacted foreign specialists, and she received the best treatment, but the human brain and memory. Doctors admitted that it's a field not entirely understood yet and suggested continuing the fight, not giving up. Victor was worried, distressed about his mother. She had done so much for him, invested all her resources in her son, lived for him, supported every initiative of Victor's, helped him in everything. Thanks to her, he was able to achieve such heights. When you have reliable support and the backing of a loved one, nothing is scary. And now his mother was in this state. Theodora supported Victor. She was aware of all the details of her mother-in-law's treatment and even helped maintain contact with the doctors. And in this most difficult moment, Victor had to leave. It was an urgent, long-term overseas business trip. It depended on the future of my company. I hesitated whether to go or not, considering my mother's illness. But Theodora, she assured me that she would look after her, monitor the process, assured that everything would be fine. I left. I trusted her so much. During his business trip, Victor spent several months abroad. He called his wife every day to inquire about his mother's condition. Everything seemed fine, except Sonora Nunez's memory wasn't returning. In fact, it seemed to be fading even more. Otherwise, her health didn't raise any concerns. Then, after consulting with Victor, Theodora arranged for Sonora Nunez to be moved to a retirement home in the forest, away from civilization, with good specialists. The stay there was expensive, but they had good rehabilitation services. Victor thought it would be better for his mother and agreed. He would later regret this decision. One morning, Theodora called Victor, her voice breaking into a scream, panicked. "Sonora Nunez is missing," she cried into the phone. "Missing? How?" Victor didn't understand. "She just escaped from the retirement home. It's been a couple of weeks." There was some misunderstanding there. They thought they informed us. They believed the police were already searching for her, but I only found out about it now when they called and asked if she had been found. Victor immediately dropped everything and returned to the capital. It was incomprehensible to him, seemed like a mistake. A person can't just disappear. A dark mystery. Victor immediately set about unraveling this strange and frightening tangle. Indeed, an elderly woman with documents in the name of Sonora Nunez was admitted to the retirement home, but they found no brain changes typical of a stroke survivor. This seemed strange to the doctors, who thoroughly examined her, concluding that she had likely never had a stroke, unless it was many years ago. But the old woman truly lacked memory. She couldn't even remember her own name and forgot basic things like washing hands properly or finding the right TV channel. The mysterious illness progressed. The doctors were baffled, trying to find the cause. Then one Monday morning, it was discovered that the old woman was missing. No outsider had infiltrated the retirement home. The cameras would have caught that. However, the same cameras recorded Sonora Nunez, who could barely button her shirt, deftly entering the gate code. How she learned it was a mystery. The retirement home staff immediately contacted Sonora Nunez's relatives. They said Theodora knew. She assured them she would immediately contact the police. The staff waited for the police, who should have at least conducted an investigation, reviewed the camera footage, taken statements, but no one came. There were no calls, no checks, nothing. The head doctor called Theodora again. Perhaps everything had resolved itself, the patient had safely made it home, and all was well. The director wanted to know if the relatives would sue, as it was a serious matter. But Theodora started screaming that she was hearing about Sonora Nunez's disappearance for the first time. Apparently, there was a monstrous error. That's when it all started, the police, intense interrogations, and the son rushing back from abroad. In the police station, Victor was shown a surveillance video. The elderly woman leaving the retirement home that night was not his mother. It was someone entirely different, only remotely resembling Sonora Nunez. This meant that Sonora Nunez never reached the facility, and someone else had been there under her name all this time. The investigation then turned towards Theodora, as all clues pointed to her. She didn't resist for long, thinking she had planned everything perfectly. She hadn't expected to fall under suspicion and wasn't prepared for interrogation, which led to her immediate confession and the unveiling of a horrific truth. Theodora despised Sonora Nunez, resenting her for the close bond she shared with Victor. Most of Victor's assets, including the house, expensive cars, and several apartments, were in Sonora Nunez's name, whom Victor trusted implicitly. This was his way of protecting his assets from potential business misfortunes. Theodora was dissatisfied with this arrangement. She saw how much her husband loved his mother, sought her opinions on important matters, and showered her with expensive gifts. Theodora wanted to wield control and influence over Victor, preferably without any limits. After Sonora Nunez's stroke, Theodora had hoped she wouldn't survive, but the elderly woman was pulled back from the brink. When Victor had to leave for a long trip abroad, Theodora saw an opportunity to rid herself of her mother-in-law, especially while she suffered from memory issues. Theodora concocted a complex scheme. She sent her former neighbor to the retirement home in place of Sonora Nunez, offering a generous payment for this act. Meanwhile, she drugged Sonora Nunez, who already couldn't remember anything, with consciousness-altering medication, and placed her on a train heading to a remote town on the other side of the country. In the midst of a freezing winter, Theodora was convinced that when the drug wore off, Sonora Nunez would disembark at some station, end up alone in an unfamiliar town, and freeze somewhere along the way. For Victor, she prepared a different story. Sonora Nunez, having lost her mind, escaped from the retirement home and got lost. The search would focus on nearby forests and villages, with no one suspecting that the real Sonora Nunez was hundreds of kilometers away. Eventually, everyone would conclude that the elderly woman perished in a swamp common in that area, and Theodora would appear uninvolved. Victor didn't waste time dealing with his monstrous wife, leaving her to the police. She received a substantial sentence, and Victor immediately initiated divorce proceedings. He redirected all his resources to finding his mother, hiring private detectives, police, and even featuring the story on national TV. However, this all started after Olivia, who had sheltered Sonora Nunez, contacted the police, leading to the initial search inquiries. If not for those lost weeks, Sonora Nunez might have been found almost immediately. Eventually, Victor found his mother's trail, leading him here, bewildered and overjoyed. I was prepared for any ending of the story. Theodora's bet was that an elderly woman with no memory would disappear in a strange city and freeze to death. That's how it should have happened, but Mom got lucky. She miscalculated. Sonora Nunez shook her head. The whole story, of course, shocked her. It's one thing to get lost by accident, and quite another when someone deliberately tries to send you to the other side. Mom, we need to go home, Victoriano said, taking her hands in his. We do, but not so fast, Sonora Nunez replied, then smiled. We and the kids have been preparing for the Christmas for so long, they've been eagerly waiting for it. So we will celebrate Christmases here. As you wish, Mom, Victoriano smiled. I've been searching for you so long that I am now ready to fulfill all your wishes. Then the man turned to Olivia and smiled warmly at her. So, may I join you for the Christmas? Sorry for inviting myself. We are waiting for you as our guest, Olivia responded. In the days leading up to Christmases, Victoriano stayed in a hotel. He visited Olivia daily, helping around the house, interacting with his mother, and getting to know the kids. Surprisingly, a man who had never had children got along with them extremely well. They built a snow fort in the yard, made a huge slide, and played tag for hours. Despite his financial status, Victoriano turned out to be a very simple and pleasant person to talk to, just like his mother. Of course, the adults constantly talked about the future. Everything Sonora Nunez and Victoriano proposed seemed unreal and unattainable to Olivia, as if it were a dream or a fairy tale. The following New Year, Olivia celebrated in her new large apartment in the capital city, bought for her and the children by Victoriano in gratitude. Now each of her children had their own room, and Olivia herself had a whole bedroom with a soft, comfortable bed. Victoria was already attending school, and the other children went to kindergarten. Olivia worked, with Victoriano helping her get a job in a restaurant. Initially, it was hard, but Olivia quickly learned everything. She now earned so much that she couldn't even believe it, even though a considerable amount of time had passed. Sonora Nunez lived in the same building, in the neighboring apartment. They constantly visited each other, essentially continuing to exist as one family. The elderly woman happily picked up Victoria from school and helped her with her homework, and in the evenings, she even took the younger ones out to play in the yard. Now Olivia's children had a grandmother, such as others could only dream of. Sometimes Olivia shared with Sonora Nunez her thoughts about undeservedly receiving all this, the apartment, a prosperous life, and loved ones nearby. I didn't do anything for it, didn't work or toil from morning till night. Remember the old fairy tales, Sonora Nunez would say in such cases, there, poor kind girls received rewards only for their pure hearts. That's what happened to you. Consider it fate repaying you for your compassion. Victoriano and Olivia became good friends, pleasant companions who easily and enjoyably talked about various topics. The man adored Olivia's children just as much as his mother did. He took care of them, enrolled the boys in a soccer section, and found a first-class choreographer for Victoria. One day, Victoriano helped Olivia greatly again. Max somehow found out that his ex now lived with her children in the capital, showed up, demanded to be let into the apartment, even threatened to sue and take the children away, claiming that fatherly feelings had finally awakened in him, and Olivia was preventing him from communicating with his own daughters and sons. Of course, no one would have given him the children, and it was hard to believe his sudden love for his offspring. It was obvious that Max wanted to leech off someone else's prosperity once again. Everything would have been all right, but Olivia was disturbed by Max's persistence. He saw the beautiful apartment, the wealth, and dreamed of becoming part of it all, to be with Olivia again. Victoriano dealt with the situation, talked to Max in such a way that Olivia never saw him again. Either he intimidated him or bought him off, possibly both. Olivia dropped a glass ball on the floor, which she was about to hang on the Christmas tree, pricked herself on the needles, instinctively unclenched her fingers, and then, for good luck, the children immediately chimed in. And Sonora Nunez was already rushing to the site of the disaster with a dustpan and brush. Once again, they were all together, again the festive hustle and bustle. The soul was warm and cozy. Victoriano would soon come for dinner. Of course, he would not come empty-handed. The little ones were already anticipating gifts. Olivia's dream of a big family and loving people nearby had finally come true. She was not alone.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.